All right, today we're going to take our two parts from figure 976, the yoke and the bushing, and we're going to assemble those. And in order to do an assembly, first thing we need to do is make sure we have a blank design ready to go. I have nothing opened here. It's an untitled document. No parts are open, no bodies, no dimensions, nothing. It's all blank, brand new, ready to go. And the first thing I want to do is save this. Okay, so we'll hit the save button. We want to make sure we give it a good name. All right, figure 976 assembly. All right, we'll say OK. Now what we need to do is drag our two pieces in. And you want to think about which one of those two pieces is the most important, which one is the central figure for the design. Since we only have two parts, pretty easy. The yoke is the larger piece. The bushing drops into the yoke. So the yoke would be the most important one. That would be our primary part or our parent. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to grab that yoke and I'm going to bring it into the drawing. So up here in the top, grab my data panel, and I have to go down and find the one I created the other day. And I can double click on it or I can drag it over. Okay, double click or drag it over. Oh, didn't work the way I wanted to. Let's go back here into our assembly. Try that one more time. Let's try dragging it. Drag it in instead of double clicking. Double clicking opened it by dragging it over. There we go. That works better. All right, we have all these little dials and knobs and squares. And what this allows us to do is move the part. The little discs here allow us to rotate the part. We can just leave it exactly where it's at. This is fine right now. Okay? And we'll say OK. Now, I would like to ground or fix this piece in place. Okay? So over here where it says 976 on the left, I can right click, and up at the top here it says ground. This is going to lock the piece in place. Okay, and by locking that piece in place, all the other parts will assemble into it, and this part will never slide or move around the screen. Okay, so we right clicked on it and we hit ground. Next thing we want to do is bring in the bushing. Okay, so same process again. We'll go over here to the little grid, and we need to find our bushing from the other day that you drew. And again, I'll drag it in. And it kind of hides itself underneath here. So now we can use some of these little tools here. I could pull this up. I can slide this over. I'm going to get it out of the way. Okay. We're going to find out and learn how to have these two pieces locked together and assemble. All right. And I can certainly drag around and get it close, but we'd like to use some constraints. We'd like to use some properties to set this up and lock these two together. So all I did was just drag it over to the side. Doesn't matter where, just off to the side, and say, OK. This part will not be grounded. Okay. The yoke is grounded. The bushing is not. The bushing is going to move around and slide in and out. So this one's free to do what it wants. Up across the top of your screen and your ribbon, you're going to want to find the assembly tools. Okay, there's a new component and there's a joint. Then there's also several other options underneath here. We want to use the joint. Okay. My yoke is shaded out, and now my bushing is ready to go. And what I need to do as I hover over this bushing, you notice there's this circle that's kind of half colored in. And as I hover around, I get different discs. I can get a disc at the bottom, about halfway up I get a disc, and at the very top I get a disc. And these are kind of connection points. And we want to think about, what are we trying to connect? Do I want to connect the top of the bushing to this surface on the yoke? Do I want to connect the bottom of the bushing? I actually want to connect the middle. So I'm going to hover over, and if you look where my mouse is at and where the cursor is at, you can see that the disc is right in the middle there with that little blue dot. I'll click, and now the bushing is hidden and the yoke is ready to go. So where do you want that bushing to connect? Over on the side? No. Right here on the top. And you notice as I hover around, I get some different discs, but we'd like the disc right here on the top. And when I click, it'll move over. And you can see my little flag spins around there. All right, those are a couple properties that we want to set up. There's a nice little screen that pops up. We have angles and offsets all set at 0. And for motion, if you do the drop-down box, you could have your items be rigid where they're locked together and they can't move. Revolute, like I have mine set for, allows the bushing to spin around, much like it would in real life. That bushing might spin in the yoke. You can have a slider, cylinder. There's several different ways you can do this. These are all different types of joints. Ball joint, like our shoulder, or right. And there's just different applications for us. I'm going to go with Revolute. And again, that will allow me, if I grab that little arrow, it'll let the little flag, it'll let me spin it around if I want to. Okay. So we say, okay. And you can still see that little flag there. And I can grab it and click on it, and you can move it around and spin the part. Okay. We don't really need to spin it for anything we're doing today. So that's pretty much all set. It's assembled and it's ready to go. Okay. If I want to look at it real quick, looks like it came together nicely. A couple of lines there makes it a little deceiving, but that is all set up. That looks good. And what we're ready to do now is actually turn this into an animation. We want to pull this apart. So over here, some of you, it says design, mine says model, and I'm looking for animation. I click on animation. All right, this is our little time frame for our animation. And over here I have components, and then you see I have figure 976 assembly, and then each of the pieces individually. Okay, what we want to do is we want to click on figure 976, the assembly. All right, and then I need to explode this part. The older version of Fusion actually has a little cartoon bomb next to it that'll explode it. Some of you the icon will look a little bit different, but we say explode, and it moves it away. Notice down here in the bottom, I actually have a 1 second delay, so my video will take 1 second for this to take place. I have a little slider here. I can drag this farther away, way off the screen, or if I bring it all the way to 0, that's where it's assembled. We'd like to have this floating up and away. So you kind of determine how far you want it to go. All right. And obviously we can zoom out here a little bit to see our drawing. And you just have to make a determination or decision how far you want it to slide away. It's up to you, but it must be hovering up above the part. And just hit the green box when you're done. All right. So now we have an exploded view. And I'm ready to go here. So now I go over to where it says animation. Go down to drawing. And up until now in our class, we've been doing drawing from design. Well, we just created an animation. So today we're going to do drawing from animation. We say, okay. Now, they do want us to save it. Okay, so we can call it 9-76 exploded. All right, say okay. This is a storyboard we've created, and the defaults look fine for me. So just say okay. All right, and it gives us the isometric view. Okay, and that's great. Very large. Okay, probably want to shrink this down, maybe 1 to 4. Maybe 1 to 2 will work. There we go, and I can put that up here. And I can say okay. Now, the assembly, whoa, we lost that little curved detail. I'll double click on it and change that to shaded because we like shaded. There we go, it looks a little better. Now, the isometric is exploded. That's great. But the top, the front, and the right side, I would like assembled. Okay. So we'll go over here to base view. And if you look now, my base view is actually assembled. 1 to 4 is very small for me. I'll try 1 to 2, see if that looks a little better. That's good. I have several things I need to put into this drawing. So 1 to 2 is about as small as or about as big as I want to get. So I'll place this over here and I'll say, okay. Do we want to see the hidden lines? Just remember, you can go back in here and open up the hidden lines and center lines. I'll leave mine off for right now. I also want to put my top view and my side view. Okay, so projected views, top view, side view. Please remember, our top view must be directly over the front view, and the side view must be directly to the right of the front view. You can't just randomly place parts. Okay, looks pretty good. All right, we'll go ahead now and we're gonna put 3 dimensions in. Just the overall dimensions, the overall length, the overall width, and the overall height. That's all you need. Okay, so maybe to save some space, I'll put my overall dimension up here. Notice that we only have that 6, and we've been asking you to put in the trailing zeros. So again, down here at the bottom, there's a little gear, and then display trailing zeros. So there's my length, and I can do that again for the depth of the part. And then if I want to put the height in, I could certainly do that as well. And just put 1 and 1. And try to line those up if we can. Okay. And then the next part of our assembly drawing is to place something called a bill of materials. For my drawing, I see BOM, bill of materials. Some of you, it might be insert table, okay? But if you look down, there's something called a parts list, balloon, there's all sorts of stuff, okay? So we just want that parts list. And it says, select the view. Which view are you going to use? I would encourage you to use the front view. And we have this big, large table. And this table sits right on top of our title block. So just hover over. All right. And if I zoom in here, I have the name of each part. It tells me how the item number, how many I have, tells me the part that it's made out of, and my description box is blank. And we'll look at how we can go and edit that in a minute. Okay. Now, some of the versions, you might notice some bubbles, what we refer to as balloons, that will pop up. My version, the balloons don't pop up. So I'll have to add those. If yours did, that's terrific. All right. So I just go back over here to BOM, bill of materials. Again, it might say insert list. And I just say balloon. And what do I want? What do I want? Well, I have 2 parts. I have the yoke and I have the bushing. So if I click on the bushing and I go out, there's a number 2. If I zoom over here, part 2 is in fact the bushing. So that matches up. The computer's keeping track of what you're doing. So I did a nice job pointing to where the bushing is. And I want to also click on the yoke. And I want to make sure it's in a good spot where I can identify what the part is. So over here on the side would be a good click. All right, somewhere clear and out of the way. And I can just drag that down. All right, I have my yoke and bushing. So it's identifying what they are. I only have to do a balloon in one view. I'm only going to put the 3 largest overall dimensions. But the one thing I'd like to focus on is I'd like to put a description in here. Okay. And let's see how we can go do this. So in order to put a description in, I have to open up the yoke and the bushing and individually and get those to find a spot I can update the description. So the way I'm going to do that, I'll go to my grid. And here's my bushing. And I'll double click it so it opens up. This is my bushing from the other day. And I want to look at a way to change the description. So here on the right hand or left hand side, I right click and I have something called physical material. And when you open that up, right now it's set to steel. Well, if you remember, it says steel here. Well, if you'd like to change that, all right, right click and physical material. There's several options down here, all sorts of different materials. You could change it and it will update if you'd like. Okay, so that's one thing you could change. The other thing, if you scroll down here, it says properties. And under properties, it has the name of the drawing. Maybe I don't like having that V1 in there. I could take that out. And for the description, I could talk about something that's unique about that part. Is it being treated with something? Is it being painted, polished? Do we need to coat it? Whatever you might want to write in here. So just to show that the information, moves over to that bill of materials, I'm just going to go ahead and write my first assembly. Okay, just so we know that there's something there. Again, look at all the great material properties about the part. It gives us the area, the density, the mass, all based on the fact that this is steel. If you change this from steel to another material, this will update. So I wrote my first assembly and I say, okay. Now I've changed something, so I need to hit save. And I can just say, okay. Now let's go over to Untitled. Well, it hasn't updated yet. Take a look over here on the left-hand side. I have these triangles, yellow triangles with exclamation points. And I need to go back and I need to change those. So need to be good problem solvers here. And we need to go find out where it says the component is out of date. Update the latest version using get latest in the model environment. All right, let's try going to, well, what can we look for here? Let's try the assembly. Here's my animation. I don't see anything here. What if I went back to model? So I'm in this exploded view, and I go back to model. And up here at the top, do you see that the yellow exclamation point is up here? If I click on that, all right, it'll update. And I say save. Go back to animation. I don't see any yellow exclamation points. I must be doing okay. I'll say save. All right, good, save. And then I'll go back into my assembly drawing. And now the yellow exclamation point is up top. And if I click on it, it will update it. So you have to have all the files open across the top. You have to be a problem solver. You have to look around. So let's see how we can do that with the yoke. All right, one more time to look at the yoke. Go to my grid, and I have to find figure 976, the yoke. This one here, I'll double click on it. And again, on the left-hand side, right click, I have physical material. You can change that up to anything you'd like. I want to work on properties. Again, maybe I don't like that version 1. I'll take that out. And for description, again, maybe this is going to be painted. All right. Part 2, and actually we like using all capital letters, right? So let's try to get into that habit. Part 2 be painted. Okay, I don't know, just anything to give us a description. So say okay and save it. And again, let's go back to the assembly. Well, that's not here. The description's not been updated. Again, look on the left. There's some yellow exclamation points. Okay, so my solution was, let's go back to that animation. There's no yellow exclamation points here. Up in the top left corner, instead of being in the animation, let's go look at the model. There you go. There's that yellow exclamation point. Click it. It takes a second. It updates. And go ahead and save. And then go back to the animation. I don't see any yellow exclamation points here. I'm okay. Maybe just hit save to be safe. And now let's go back to the assembly drawing. And there's that yellow exclamation point. If I update it, part to be painted. Okay. I'll save this. Figure 976 assembly drawing looks great. Zoom out. Again, I have the 3 overall dimensions. I have my balloons. I have a bill of materials filled out. The only other thing I would do, and we're pretty good at this by now, is I would go ahead and add add my logo and complete my title block. When you're done, output as PDF, and you're going to upload a working drawing of the bushing with all the dimensions, a working drawing of the yoke with all the dimensions, and then this drawing that we just did here, the assembly drawing. Okay. Good luck and nice job with our new skill.